Today I'm going to be talking to you about how to keep user research central in your team and in your business. So that includes how to keep user insights central, and from them how to keep users at the front of everyone's mind. But before that, I'll give you a little bit of background about me. So I am currently a UX researcher at Well Pharmacy. Before that, I was part of the UX team at Matalan. And then before that, I actually come from a clinical trial and academia research background. So my main focus in clinical trials was to improve the quality of life of head and neck cancer patients. So a pretty different mixed research background, but a lot of interlapping skills and a way that's really given me a good insight into how to tackle user insights and the importance of them. So if anyone has any questions about research in general at the end, please feel free to pass them on. So let's get started. So just to cover, what actually is UX research? So UX research is basically how we study users and how we kind of define what their needs, expectations, our requirements are. So that can be in relation to a specific product or just in general, whenever they use our service, what do they need from us? UX is also really good at drilling down to the why. So why do users perform a certain action? Why do users behave a certain way? Why do they pick design A over design B? And that's kind of what's really important here to think about, is the why. So if that's UX research, what actually is a UX researcher? So I think if we consider those two requirements from UX research, then we know that a UX researcher needs to be the advocate for the user. So to really be the voice for them in any negotiations in regards to product, and make sure that what we do deliver suits the user needs and doesn't cause them any more pain points when using our service. So how do we actually perform UX research in a way that is insightful and actionable? So we do that from my point of view, and on my reading, I really enjoyed these principles. So principle number one is identifying that I'm not the user. I don't know what's best for them. I can only go to them for that information. So, for example, we have seen in the past, there's always been products that can be delivered that actually don't suit user needs. And from that, they're not actually suitable for our customers. That kind of really pulls in nicely to principle number two, which is that the user needs have to come first. So a lot of product teams, when they aren't involved in UX, will tend to think product first. And then from that, they can deliver something that isn't actually suitable for the customer base. And they will try to fit the customers around the product rather than trying to fit a product around what the customers require. By thinking user first there, we can kind of solve that issue of make sure that we are delivering something that is going to be used by our customers and is going to be suitable for what they require from our service as well. Make sure there's nothing there that's just unused. And then principle number three is that we need to make sure that we are paying attention to what our customers do. So this kind of pulls into the fact that there are two different types of research. If you really drill down to it, there is behavioural research, which is where you watch what customers do and you are seeing what their behaviours are. And then there's like attitudinal research, where we are asking for users' opinions, listening to what they're saying. And it's just really important in UX that we're aware that there are two different types there, and that behavioural is a lot more suitable for us. Last year in a conference, I actually had a really good example of this that I will talk you through now. So I'm sure you all recognise this. It is a boom box. Sadly, I can't put it on my shoulder and play any music for the reference, but I'm sure you all understand it. So when Philips were coming out with the boombox, they had two different colours, the yellow and the black. And to know which one their users would prefer, they had a focus group. And in this focus group, they had a bunch of their target users, and they asked them, which one would you prefer? Which one do you think you would buy? And most of them said the yellow. So that it was youthful, it was more appealing. The black one was conservative, it was boring, it was a bit old. And then the researchers thanked them for their time. And as a thank you, said to the volunteers that they could take a boombox with them when they left. Now, majority of the volunteers actually took a black boombox, regardless of what they said during the focus group. And that's just a really good example of why we need to be aware that what users say doesn't always match what they'll do. I'm sure we're all aware of biases in research, and we just have to make sure that we're aware of them. So that all sounds pretty good, right? We just need to make sure that we are aware of what our users want. We need to make sure that we're putting their needs first over our own, and we need to just make sure that we're watching what they're doing and taking any opinions or preferences with a pinch of salt until we have proof. But there are issues that arise when you are conducting UX research. And some of these that I found when I've been talking to other researchers are really match with my own experience. So some of them are biases within the business. So there can be a bias within certain teams that says that what they are putting forward as a project is the correct way to go, and then through that they can already solutionize a product before we've even had a chance to do any background research with users. There can be a lack of credibility or confidence in research. So this can be where teams have had little or a bad experience with research in the past, that they don't actually know what accredit research can be to different projects. And some of these issues can come from the researcher's side as well. So that can be in relation to the researcher can provide vague insight. So this is where you just, it can be a generalization that isn't very powerful, isn't robust, and thus it can't be actioned by the teams and can't really be used anywhere. There can also be lazy research plans. So it's easy when you don't involve others to kind of fall into your own patterns of behaviours, where let's say a user researcher can have a certain method that they use to answer their research questions, and they can repeat this method over and over again without actually reviewing their own behaviour to see if there is a better method or an alternative one that they can use to gain more robust research. But there is ways to get around this. So this is another principle that I think is extremely important. That once I learned it, I brought it into all of my work, which is to make sure that it is not the user researcher's job to know the users off by heart, but it is their job to teach the business about those users. So you can have questions come in where I am asked, we are bringing in dropship and we need to be aware of exactly who our user base is going to be. I'm not going to know that off the top of my head, or if we don't have any previous research into dropship when we've not had that service before. But if I know how to do it, I can bring those people in and discuss how we can find out what our user base could be and see what our user needs would be around that kind of service. And then once we actually have products go live, there's this little image here that I really like. It's like, once you build something, you need to measure how that affects our users, take those insights into learnings and come up with new ideas on how we can improve the user journey. And that kind of overlaps with a few different teams and really promotes a constant improvement environment. There's also some different ways that we can improve user research in the business, and one needs is to have a really open dialogue with stakeholders. So this can be from the very beginning, making sure that we are establishing what their knowledge base is around UX research, whether they have had any experience with that, how that experience was, whether they have any holdups in regards to research, and what their expectations are around it as well. So if we really clarify that early on and decide what kind of communication methods would be best for them, and really keep them informed throughout the process, we can really open up a better working relationship. For example, you might find that you might work differently with different teams. So maybe a finance department might respond better to statistics and numbers, whereas a marketing department might respond best to seeing videos of users and images. To say some stereotypes, but you need to really change your communication style depending on what the team would respond best to. It's also to make sure that the insight that we do give out kind of holds on to a few different principles again. So that's that insight has to be visible to everybody. So make sure that we are doing playbacks often. Make sure that our team are aware of the findings that we do have, and that we're opening that up to a wider audience as well. Those insights then have to be accessible to people, so we're not just plugging it back and then putting it away so that no one sees it again. Everyone has to have access to be able to see anything that they're interested in and look into it themselves as well. We need to make sure that the research we play back is as truthful as it can be. So make sure that we are saying the voice of the user without adding our own biases into it. And that all the insight and the recommendations we make are actually connected. So it says a really consistent dialogue throughout a playback or throughout a certain piece of research. And that might change as the website changes and our user base changes, but we need to just make sure that we are aware that we are keeping a consistent voice. It's also really important to bring in, same as the stakeholders, to bring in the wider team early. So that can be bringing in dev, product, bringing in the designers and everyone into workshops, bringing them into kickoff sessions, bringing them to anything that you can, just to make sure that they are aware of steps that research takes, to make sure that the user is at the forefront of our minds, and by seeing that, it becomes at the forefront of theirs. They are aware of the steps we are taking, of what our user base is, and it's a good way of teaching them just who our users are, and making sure that when they go back to their own teams, they can take that information with them. So that kind of brings me to the end of today's presentation. Just to go over, I think it's really important, if you do take anything from today, that it is the principles. So that should make sure that you know that you're not the user, and that's okay. That makes it so much more interesting. Who wants to do research on themselves? The user needs come first over the product needs. You need to make sure that you watch what the users do, not just what they say, to avoid biases. And you need to make sure that you're teaching your teams about the users as well, just to make sure that everyone's aware. And that is me all done. Thank you so much for your time.